All righty, boys and girls, the kid is back, and welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your hosts, Alex and Chris. Never calls them freets, they are Freedom Fries Condit. They're American villain voices, and as always, bringing you the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions, socials, show notes, follow, listen, subscribe, all the stuff. Honestly, we're gonna skip a lot of the pageantry today because, as you can probably hear in my voice, and if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in my scruffy face and unkempt hair, I've been fighting for my life most of this week against the flu. It's why we partially weren't able to record last night, but much like Michael Jordan, I'm here to gut it out for the next 30 minutes while we do this episode. So to anyone from Wasserman listening, is legit crap. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah.
Oh, God damn it. We're off to a splendid start.
Yeah.
To anyone from my work who has been listening, my sick emoji on Slack was legit. I was dying. I was not faking for this. Yeah, it's been a week, and you can hear that, you can see it, and I'm probably gonna be all over the place while we talk. But Chris, while I've been dying and in and out of consciousness, how have you been, sir?
I'm great. Personally, everything's good. And, from a Villa perspective right now, how could we be, at least in the Champions League, you can't be any more pleased than we are right now. It was a fun game to watch for the second half, and we'll talk more about that. But Villa are in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and I don't know that I was ready for this, to happen this year. So despite the sort of up and down season that we've had in the Prem, I'm over the moon here with the way things have gone in the Champions League.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I said we were going to dispatch with the pleasantries. So let's hop right into our match recap then, and talk about this game. Now, I will give us credit because we said that at the outset of this year. Now, we said making the playoffs would be a good result for Villa. Not making top 8, we didn't think that was going to happen. But I don't know if you did, but I'm pretty sure I said that if Villa made it to the knockout rounds, anything was possible. And I did see an outside chance of us going on a run just with Emery, the way the draw could fall, all that kind of stuff. And clearly we have. Now, let's talk about the game that actually happened, though, before we get into what could be. Strong lineup, despite the 3-1 advantage. John McGinn going to the 10 spot with Kamara coming back into the lineup. Rodgers wide right. Rashford wide left. Ian Maatsen gets the start. And then a back line of Cash, Konsa, Mings, and aforementioned Maatsen. Chris, what were you thinking when you saw us line up?
I thought it was a strong lineup in bench. I think that up front with Rodgers wide and Rashford on the other side, it creates interesting possibilities because, like we've talked about, Rodgers tends to stay wide when he's on the right, whereas Rashford is always going to stay wide and look to drive in or get a cross in or some sort of square ball in, whatever it may be. But he maintains width. So I think from an attacking standpoint, I like that idea. We didn't see much of it in the first half, but I think that front three, or those two in those positions in the front three, can make a lot of sense going forward. And I thought it was an interesting wrinkle that I don't think we've seen much so far since Rashford's been brought on.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I just hate McGinn in the 10 spot. I understand the versatility. I understand he's the captain. I understand why we do it. And not so much for him being there per se, and more so what Unai then does for our build-up play with Kamara dropping back into the back three and then McGinn dropping into the midfield two with Yori. Rodgers moves over, Cash comes up. There's a lot of movement there that I don't necessarily think is productive movement, in that it's not movement that confuses the defense, that makes them worry about who they're supposed to mark or pass guys off or anything like that. It's just a lot of time to get guys into position. And as I've said before, I think it removes one of Kamara's most effective offensive weapons, his ability to turn on the ball. So frankly, moving forward, I would rather not do that. And if McGinn has to get benched, McGinn has to get benched. But that was the one thing that I was worried about. And so you kind of alluded to this, though. Despite being good in theory, first 15 minutes felt a little nervous.
Nah, I really wasn't. So I when I read your recap of the game, I don't know that I was nervous because Bruges had a lot of the ball, yes, but to me, they had a couple of good chances that I can remember early, but like they didn't look to me like a team that was in all that much of a hurry to get the ball forward and try and get back in the tie either. I think some of that was tactical to take the crowd out of it, which was effective, by the way, because the crowd was raucous to start, and Bruges really kind of lulled things to sleep quite a bit. You know, there was a lot of passing around the back and passing around the midfield, and Villa really were not interested at all in coming out or trying to dominate the ball. So I think I wouldn't say nervous. I think that went the way that Unai Emery planned. I don't think that he had any designs on trying to dominate the ball and trying to put this to bed early. I think he was happy to sit and wait, and it happened to break our way, I think, with a lot of things. But I do think that this was tactical on both teams' parts. So the first half to me was something of a slaw, you know.
So I agree with you on the Bruges side of things. I will just say that Tyrone Mings' post-game interview would reinforce my interpretation of events when he said that they clearly got it wrong in their defensive structure, in their timing of their press and all that kind of stuff. I don't think that this was tactical by Unai. Now, I do think that he wanted to stay compact, but I think that it wasn't that he just wanted to keep this 0-0. I think that we didn't necessarily find the right opportunities or the right ways to press the possession that Bruges had to create the turnovers and go quickly the other way. And you saw this, honestly, even after they went down to 10 men. They were down to 10 men for 10 minutes. So by the 25th minute, they had outpassed us 195 to 67.
Yeah.
So, Villa really were not getting on the ball. We're not getting forward at all. I agree with you. Bruges didn't press the issue.
Right.
But I think that was intentional on your part to not make the game up and back. And that being said, it was still effective for them. By the 10th minute, they had 3 opportunities. They were force feeding to Kuipers down the left-hand side. And they got a good ball to Vanaken in the 8th, who beats Mings to the header and puts it just wide. There was the curling attempt on the 10th that wound up smacking Ezri Konsa in the face. Like, I don't know, to say that they didn't really threaten in those first 10, 15 minutes is wholly accurate. I think we were composed and handled the pressure well. But if this game stays 11-on-11 for much longer and Bruges scores in the first 30-ish minutes, I mean, we're talking about a completely different time.
We're absolutely, yes, we are 100%. I agree with that. And I guess like from my perspective, the one chance that I kind of went, was the header that went. I guess the attempt that hit Konsa in the face, I thought we had that pretty well covered. I thought that was good defending. But you are right. Like Bruges did have all the ball. I think at one point they had like 70% possession in the first half. And Villa really weren't interested in coming out, or maybe not interested is not the right way to say, but Villa were stuck in the middle and back third of the pitch without any real threat going forward until right? Until Emi Martinez makes a great pass. I mean, just that is and one thing that I think we've talked about a couple of times on this podcast is as much credit as we give Emi Martinez as a shot stopper, his distribution has really been great and it's been great for a long time. But it's something that if you look at when he first came to the club to now, it's something that he clearly has focused on and worked on and improved a great deal. I mean, that ball to Rashford was 1 in a million. It was a great ball, perfect weight, perfect everything to it. Rashford is free on goal, and I mean the most obvious red card in the history of red cards occurs. I mean, there was no argument from anyone when the red came out. Not from the bench, not from the field, nobody. So I like that obviously changed the game. I know Bruges still, like you said, kept a lot of the ball for the next 30 minutes or so, 25 minutes. But at that point, I was supremely confident that this was going to end in a Villa victory. 2 goals down on aggregate, down 10 men away from home. It would have been a Hollywood script to come back from that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, 15-minute red card. I think I wrote down tie is over.
Yeah.
Amazing by Emi to ping the ball that far, that accurately. That's the kind of long range passing that most of the media has praised Ederson and Allison for years now. That I think Emi has in his locker that hasn't necessarily gotten the credit for. Great read by Rashford. I think Saba was very out of position when he initially started to make that run. Takes advantage of the young right back, something that we highlighted earlier in our first match against Bruges this year was the young outside backs that they were putting out there. And you're right, stonewall penalty. And so 15 to 45th, I mean, not much more to say. Like Bruges maintained the possession, but while I said they had 3 like fairly decent opportunities in those first 10 minutes, didn't really have it anymore, weren't necessarily cutting us open. Best one probably on the 25th when De Kuyper had that beautiful outside of the boot pass to Solis that he just had the way too hard of a touch on to dribble it out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
But going the other way, I think is more what we need to talk about and what is emblematic of this first half. Villa, the easiest way to describe it, incredibly static. And I think purely epitomized in the 36th minute when Maatsen wound up on the right wing and taking that kind of long range curling effort. When you rewatch that, he makes the dribble all the way up, has the little give and go, like winds up on the right side with Matty Cash. And the rest of the midfield in the forward line doesn't move.
Yeah.
No one goes up there to get with him. Ollie Watkins just kind of stands there staring at him from the penalty spot. And there just didn't seem to be any effort from Villa when they would get the ball to try to actually play and move with one another, make a run, try and draw a defender out of position so that somebody else make the unselfish run so that someone else can make the run in behind. And I think when you look at the two halves, what was unsuccessful versus what was when Asensio came on, it was that. It wasn't just Asensio, but it was the unselfish running and the interplay between the 3 forward line of him, Rashford, and Morgan Rogers all moving, switching positions. That actually was what opened up the Bruges defense for those goals that we got.
And I mean, to give you credit, that was something that you talked about a few pods ago with almost positionless football up there, right? With those 3 where they can constantly move and switch, and it makes things difficult for the defense. And I mean, I know Asensio deserves a lot of credit for the 2 goals and everything, right? I thought the biggest change was with him coming on was his positioning and his runs. Like you mentioned, it changed everything up front, and he just like the 2 goals he scored are because of how he positioned himself and the runs he made. So like that is what I'm most excited about for the rest of this season. And if Villa end up making him a permanent player, which right now, if the number is 15 million euro, like do it tomorrow. And and don't look back, because he looks worth way more than that. But his ability to find space and to recognize when those opportunities are going to come to work into space, and the ability to link up with the other two forwards, in particular Rashford. They seem to have a knack for each other. I really think is worth crediting, and to me that was the biggest difference up front from the first half to the second half, because of his ability and his willingness to come forward. The other two forwards in that case are freed up, and then you see it moving throughout the rest of the team, and everyone kind of grows in confidence and grows in their willingness to come forward, and eventually, I mean, you had 8 guys in the box on some of those attacking movements. So a tale of two halves is putting it lightly. It was like a totally different team out there in the second half.
Well, you have more guys occupying space further forward, right? Because McGinn's not dropping into the back line.
Right.
So he's a little bit further forward. So now you've got the 2 midfielders. Now you've still got someone holding the 10. And then instead of a right back who, while we think highly of him, is limited in Matty Cash, you've got a dangerous Leon Bailey out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've just got more players that can actually do damage occupying that forward space. And so I'm gonna pat myself on the back again from a few pods ago when I said Leon Bailey is one of Unai Emery's most trusted lieutenants.
Yep.
Who'd he bring on at halftime when he needed to spark something? Leon Bailey. And who got the first assist on a beautiful dinked ball into Asensio? It was a one Mr. Leon Bailey.
So that ball from Bailey, it was a really nice finish from Asensio, even though I'm not 100% sure that was how he meant to hit the ball with his foot, but still worked. No, that ball that Bailey played, he plays it kind of off of his like pinky toe almost, on the outside of his foot to dink it in. It was letter perfect, and I'm glad you shouted that out, because I wanted to give credit for that pass, because it was one of the better passes I've seen from him this season, and like we've talked about a million times, Leon Bailey is such an important and good player for us. He's had a bit of a tough stretch and a bit of a tough season, so all the positive things he can do, and I say that, and I think he's got like 11 goal involvements, by the way, but I think that like everything that comes from him that's positive is going to build confidence for him. And it seemed like early on there that sort of sparked, like I said earlier, sparked everyone feeling more confident in coming forward. And I just like I know that Brugge may have been the worst team outside of us left in the Champions League at this point, but I just to see them dominate for 45 minutes like that was good to see for me. And in the 90 minutes, sure, we had a not great first half, but to play that well at home in Europe, it gets me excited. I mean, I can't wait for April 9th now,
Look, building on that, I've said for a while now, I want to see a performance. A team that is worse than us, I want to see us put our foot on their throats and just end the game. Don't make it difficult. Don't have it 1-0 or 2-1 or, something like that. End it. And sure, it took a red card to get there, but you can only play the team in front of you. And when team goes down to 10 men, you put that team away.
And it was an earned red card. It wasn't like it was
absolutely earned red card. But I'm saying that this was a time where Villa was presented with a team that was lesser than by red card, and they put them away 3-0. Like it was not difficult. And while I say there were some nervy moments in the first 10 minutes, like you're right, it's not like they skied one over on an open net or something like on the balance of play over 90 minutes, Villa absolutely deserved this victory and deserved the comprehensive victory. One other thing that I want to talk about though in the second half that we did differently was the buildup was not as slow. I think Unai picked out the fact that we could run on these guys and get in behind. And so you saw it in the 53rd minute. Asensio makes that run right after scoring in between the right center back and the center back when they went to a back three. Was able to find that space. Yuri finds him, and it was a little bit of a heavy touch that kind of goes to the keeper. Then again, the second goal is us going over the top again with Yuri finding Rashford, and Rodgers have that interplay, and it pings off of Maatsen. And so, sometimes I think Villa fans complain that we're building up too slow, and you and I have talked about how we haven't necessarily been able to pick apart a team that's kind of set in to defend. And this is one way that we can do it through the intelligent movement of our front three by opening up some of those lanes and maybe trying to go over the top as opposed to just working it slowly left to right. That's something else that we can potentially do, and hopefully we see a little bit more of in the stretch run of this season.
And it makes sense from a personnel standpoint. You've brought in all this speed, right? You've got guys that can move now all over the front. And it makes sense to take advantage of that pace by going over the top. And I mean, it's how you drew the red, and then it's how you really saw them break down Brugge in the second half. So absolutely. And I hope it's another tool in the toolbox more than anything that you can do tactically differently. If one way's not working, you can make a change midstream like you saw in this game and go a different way.
Now, we've talked a lot offensively. I think defensively, we also deserve some credit. Now, we were defending against 10 men, but they were passing the ball around the park with 10 men in the first half, and we switched that up in the second. I wish I had paid more attention to what we did tactically to do this, but again, flu brain.
I was too busy partying,
What I did notice by the end of the game was the Vanaken, who has tormented us through 2 games so far this year, and is by far their best player, and honestly someone I really admire, really fun to watch. Last 30, maybe the whole second half, he was basically having to pick up the ball as an auxiliary center back on that left-hand side. And so we were able to keep him very, very far away from where he is most dangerous and where he can most create. And a lot of times, because of our defensive formation, when he got the ball, he was basically just passing it back and forth with another center back. He wasn't even able to progress. So the defensive work that we were able to do on him for what he creates for that team, I think was also a huge factor in our ability to be successful.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. They're like, for as much as you talked about, they had a couple of threats early. There was no point in the second half that I thought to myself, like, oh man, we need to make a stop here. We're out of position here, something like that. So credit to the players and to the coaching staff for really making the correct adjustments and putting this, like you said, putting this to bed and moving on. It was wonderful to see from me.
Last thing I got, Pau sighting, and Rodgers gets some rest.
Yeah. So I was super happy to see Pau come off the bench. That's exciting again, because we've now got 2 straight clean sheets, right? And I mean, we've been defending pretty well in the Champions League generally. We've not conceded a lot of goals, but like to have that now, to have Pau back, we've talked about what a difference maker he is for the team, and how much differently and in a lot of ways better they play in attack with Pau on the pitch. So we want him back. We want him back for the stretch run. We want him back for the cup run. We want him back for the Champions League, so it's good to have him back. He's like a nice, soft Spanish blanket.
I have nothing to add to that.
I mean, is that not an apt description?
Yeah, Spanish blanket. I don't know.
Well,
nice
Spanish
meal, a Spanish red wine, a cozy Spanish red wine. Yeah, we'll workshop.
He's like a delicious paella.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? Good points, bad points? moments in the game you
I
want
think
to
we
talk
hit
about?
the good, and we mentioned the struggles, right? So that's pretty much
No.
the bad.
I guess Ollie Watkins' injury probably a bad. I mean, it sounds like he was taken off as a precaution, but he
Yeah,
did ask to come off. And
yeah,
this does seem to be something that we're dealing with over the second half of this season, is that Ollie seems to be picking up a few more knocks from time to time that
yeah.
are taking him out of games.
Yeah. The the problem with that is for the Champions League specifically, Mullen isn't registered, so he can't come on. We
Right.
really don't have a lot of cover unless you bring Rashford on as a striker. That'd be the only other real option you have out there. So that's a concern. I think that the international break here is going to help, and a little bit of lack of congestion in the fixture schedule, although it picks right back up, in April. But I think you'll see Mullen play maybe a little more and get a spot start or
God, I
two.
hope so.
We need to, right? But at this point, like you're looking at, we've got to keep Watkins healthy for the Cup and for the Champions League and for the league as well. So we have an option in Mullen, who's looked very lively when he's been out there. So let's put him out there. Would be what I would suggest. I don't think there are any other bad points. Again, another good point. Like I said, second straight clean sheet.
Yep.
Happy to see that. And it wasn't even with our clean sheet master Robin Olsen. It was with Emi Martinez.
Yeah. Well, for the sake of my voice, we'll need to discuss the Mullen situation another day. I
Yeah.
certainly have some thoughts that I'm not going to expound upon now. So let's talk about the larger impact on this season, Chris. And we have Aston Villa are into the quarterfinals of a Champions League against PSG, potentially playing Real Madrid if they're able to get through this tie. I don't know that I ever truly believed that I would say that phrase. Uh, I don't know when we'll say it again. Hopefully soon, but who knows? So I guess two questions. How do you feel about that? And then how are you feeling about PSG and the tie? And we don't need to go into a statistical
Right.
preview of PSG. We'll do that later, but just gut reaction, like how are you feeling?
Yeah. So two things, right? The first, to answer your first question, I'm honestly still kind of processing it. It's crazy. Like I texted my buddies, and I saved this. I didn't text you this because I wanted to save it for this pod. Like 8 years ago, Aston Villa had an away day at Pirelli Stadium to play Burton, seating 6,700 people in the championship, and probably 4,000 showed up, if we're going to be honest about that, right? And now we're going to play PSG at Parc des Princes in Paris for the Champions League quarters. Like that's bananas. So to think of the short space of time that has happened from point A to point B here is crazy. And credit again to the club, Unai Emery, and the players for this rapid ascent. And we knew when we got Emery that he was a great European manager, and he's showing it now. And in terms of how I feel against PSG, my gut reaction is that it's not impossible. They're the favorite to win, obviously, against us, but it's not like I'm sitting there going, oh well, there's no chance we can beat them in a two-legged draw with the second leg at home. That's my gut. What was that rolling of your eyes?
I mean, not just that they're the favorites to beat us. I think they're the favorites to win the whole thing now.
You think so?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think they've actually jumped to be the betting favorites as well. But I think even that aside, like the eye test of just how they blew away Liverpool in that
Yeah.
first leg, who a lot of people thought was the best team in the competition at that point. Like, who else really looks as complete? I don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
Real Madrid has looked largely fallible throughout this season. Arsenal doesn't have a striker.
Well,
Dortmund,
but
they're in
PSG didn't
10th in
play
the
great to start.
Bundesliga.
Like PSG didn't play great to start the competition. Is
Yeah,
all
but
I'm.
ever since they beat City, I feel like they've
Yeah,
been growing and growing in confidence.
yeah.
Barcelona has been hit or miss. They're probably second favorites. And then you've got like Inter and Bayern, who I don't think anybody's writing anything home about either one of those teams. So I think
You
PSG
didn't
is
mention there's one you forgot. There's another English team in there you forgot.
outside Arsenal. They don't have a
You
striker.
did. All right, I thought I
Yeah,
missed it.
after
Sorry.
Madrid. Listen, as are you, I think I'm still processing quarterfinal. Like I think it hit me when we went to the Bologna match, and now everything like doesn't necessarily reach that height of seeing it in person if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of conflicted about this, and here's why. I'll kind of blend the whole thing into one. As a team, PSG scared the hell out of me. Their front three, Dembele scoring for fun this year. Kvaratskhelia, I think, is a phenomenal player, super exciting. You're seeing all the stats now about how Vitinha has completed like the most passes bar Busquets, Xabi Alonso, and maybe one other person in like the history of the competition. Um, he looks fantastic. Barcola looks amazing. Like this team just looks so good, young, and not and complete and hungry in a way that the Messi, Neymar, and Mbappe teams weren't. This seems like a team that has something to prove that's on its way up, and that frightens me. Now I think that you certainly have like the Unai Emery revenge factor. We've got Marco Asensio in, who supposedly can tell us all about how they play, whatever. I think that's interesting. But part of the excitement for you and I coming into this Champions League was the ability to play the Bayern Munichs, the Juventuses, the historical great teams of Europe. And so I didn't really want to play Liverpool, one, because they know us really well and they know how to beat us really well.
Mm-hmm.
But PSG also feel like the least prestigious of the remaining clubs. So like there is a little bit of doubt of like, I don't know, PSG's existed for 40 years. Like they're owned by another Arab nation, much like
Yeah.
Man City. I would rather get drawn against a Barcelona, Real Madrid, or whatever, just for the sake of getting to see Villa play, at those stadiums. Munich again, whatever.
Yeah. The only thing is, like,
I
if you're looking at the French league, though, right? The French league, they're a newer club, but they're in recent history anyway. They're a
Sure.
monster club, right? Yeah.
But honestly, from that, I'd rather play Marseille for
Yeah.
the history that's there. I don't know. That's just me. I don't see PSG as a big club the way those other clubs are big clubs. They're a good club. They're a scary club, but I don't know that they're like a good club. Kind of like City. Like City is not a historically great club. It's not
Sure.
exciting to go to the Etihad stadium the way it is to Old Trafford. Sorry, like it's not.
Old
So
Radford, more like.
yeah, not much longer for this world. So I don't know. I'm kind of rambling at this point. Like I think
Yeah. No,
PSG is
that's
an
right.
awesome team. I probably, if you push me right now, I would say I agree with all the ESPN pundits that picked PSG to win somewhere between 4-2 to 5-1 on aggregate. But we'll do a full prediction thing later. Regardless, so exciting. Quarterfinals of the Champions League, playing a team that is the favorite to win it. I can't wait to see these matches.
And it's an Unai Emery derby, like you
And
said.
it is in Unai Derby. Absolutely. So with that, we have one cold water. And that is, Chris, if Villa end this season without silverware, it will be a massive disappointment.
I pour some cold water on that. Only because, like, Champions League, as we've just now talked about, feels it's fun and it's great. Like, this is amazing. But it feels unlikely that we're going to win that. I'm just gonna. I think we're a long shot. I haven't looked up the betting odds, but you could, if you lay down some money and bet on Villa, you'll probably win a few shekels for it if they do pull it off. So that leaves the FA Cup, right? And I just am one, and it irrespective of sport, of what sport you're talking about, I accept how difficult it is to win something, to win any silverware. And so as much as we crush like Arsenal for not winning and things like that, I also understand like one team wins each of these competitions. And there are only a handful of very, very good teams to great teams. And so for Villa to be able to do it at this stage in the process, I think would actually be ahead of the schedule. And it would be great. I would love to see it, particularly like the FA Cup win. I think would be awesome. And I'll be disappointed if and when we get knocked out of both these competitions. But I don't think that I would call it a massive disappointment, because the runs themselves have been so much fun. And you and I got to go to Villa Park to see the Bologna game in person, which was a once in a lifetime experience. And so like that sort of stuff is going to stay with me forever. So I have so much faith in the process that Villa are now building and executing, that I think that this is going to be something where we're going to see European competitions and cup runs for a while now. If this goes according to plan and the way the owners want, Unai Emery stays for a long time and we build something here that's sustainable.
Yeah, I'm pouring a ton of cold water on this because I think that Villa bar Preston are far and away the worst club remaining in both tournaments that we're in. We obviously are in the Champions League. We read those names. You could argue maybe we're better than Dortmund, I suppose. But like, who cares? It's a long, difficult road to win the Champions League. And then you look at the FA Cup, and so I'll read the other teams to you. Fulham, just behind us in the table. Crystal Palace just smashed us 4-1. Brighton won like 7 games in a row. Forest third. Bournemouth fifth on a great run. And City fourth, I think, or whatever, third, like on the run that they've been on. They've definitely kind of arrested the fall of earlier this season. I don't think that you can confidently pick Villa against any of those teams. I sent you the table earlier today. Over the past 2 months on adjusted goal differential, Villa is only better than the 3 relegated teams. Literally the 17th worst team in the entire Premier League. So we're flying high on the Champions League quarterfinal. We're really excited about pressing against the FA Cup. Like that doesn't paper over the fact that this team has not necessarily been good or convincing over the past 2 months in the league. So when you combine the fact that we're far and away the worst team in both competitions, and then you also consider the fact that despite being poor, we're 2 points off of 5th place in the Premier League and the EP and the 5th Champions League spot there. And you look at the matches that we have remaining on our schedule, as I pointed out a couple podcasts ago, they're basically all 6-pointers against teams that are in and around us. I think it'll be very easy for the team to, and understandable for the team to not necessarily like totally know where their focus is and probably have a couple slip ups. And while we hope that we don't slip up in all 3, the cards could easily fall that way. And so to say that it would be a massive failure, I think is going a bit far. Would we be disappointed? Yes. But I think it would be very understandable if that were to ultimately happen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with that. I like I said, it's been fun and it's really hard to win. Like it's just it's hard to win these things. It's not easy. So let's just enjoy the run we're on. In the cup run and in the Champions League, if somehow we can like get consistent in the league, who knows what happens then? You know, we're not going to win it, but we could find our way into a Champions League place. But like we've talked about, I'd be happy as long as we finish in Europe. In Europe, that's all I want. That's my goal.
As Tyrone Mings has said, and as Unai said repeatedly, one game at a time. Let's just look ahead to Preston.
Yep,
we're on to Cincinnati.
We're on to Cincinnati. That's right. Yeah.
All right, last one real quick before I capsize. We are going to infiltrate the Villarati with the talk of the Champions League round, and sadly, it was not Villa's 3-0 victory. It was Julian Alvarez and his supposed double touch on his penalty. Chris, you are the VAR skeptic. I think that I have traditionally been the concept of VAR supporter. I won't go so far as to say that I'm a VAR supporter, because I think I've said plenty of times I don't like how it's been implemented. This was the worst of the worst. You talk about legislating toenails all the time. I've seen it. I actually saw a great tweet that kind of perfectly encapsulated what I said. They said it was something like, you remember the blue, black, or white gold dress?
Oh yeah.
They said it was like that. It's an optical illusion. If I watch the clip thinking there's a touch, I see a touch. If I watch the clip thinking there isn't a touch, there isn't a touch. And to me, then there is no need for VAR to intervene there. It is not a clear and obvious error. Unless you have kind of like semi-automated offsides where you know that the ball has been touched because there's a microchip in there. And now we're getting into the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. But then you should not be intervening in that. No one could look at that video and tell me that they conclusively thought that the referee made an issue. They can't. Right. I don't care what UEFA said today. They're wrong. They're just flat out wrong.
Yep. So, I mean, it actually goes back to what I cut up on the solo pod. It's not that different from the issue I had with the offside on Ollie Watkins in the game against Brentford. It just like, what are we talking about here? Nobody on earth said, wait a minute, I think he might have touched that ball twice. Nobody. They didn't say that on the pitch. Nobody said that. Nobody said that. I'm like, and I'll repeat the line I said last pod. For 150 years, whenever they started penalty kicks, but whatever. From the day they started penalty kicks to the implementation of VAR, that is a good penalty kick. It's good. We're done. We move. That's it. Now we have this terrible thing where we are watching granulated images in slow motion to determine whether or not this guy's left big toe or whatever it was may have brushed the ball first. I hate everything about it so much.
That's why I always say they should only be able to look at it live speed. Yeah. No slow-mo. Live speed, if you can't call it differently, if you're not 100% sure, then you go with the call on the field. It should be there for egregious errors.
They created a controversy here where I don't think one would have existed. You know, I really don't think if they didn't stop and VAR that, I don't think anybody is sitting there going like, "Oh, wait a minute,
hold on. We live in a social media world.
That's true. I forgot.
On Twitter who absolutely would have clipped that and tried
to create right. You're probably right.
Widespread, no. But to say there would be nobody, you are living in a hole, my friend.
That's true. Well, sometimes I'd like to, I just like. All right. Then I'll say it a different way. If you think that farce is good for the game and good for football, like you're just wrong and you're an idiot. Yeah. And we don't often say things that strongly on this podcast, but like if you think that's good, you must be really fun at parties. because that just takes everything out of the game. I was disappointed to see that, to be honest with you. I didn't get a chance to see it live. So when I saw like the replay and the reaction online, I was disappointed that this happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end it. Well, we will be back sometime next week, hopefully pre-March Madness with a Preston preview, so that I don't have to miss any games. Otherwise, I'll be looking over here the entire time. But this has been fun, my friend. Villa are on to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. We cannot stop saying that. And until we talk again, my friend, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.